Well, we are back here on Cats and Cosby, and there was a headline the other day that even though BLM, Black Lives Matter, raised nearly $90 million over 2 years, they may be going broke. Where did the money go? Well, joining us now is the chairman of Project 21. He's on the National Advisory Board, Horace Cooper. Horace, are you surprised to hear maybe the money didn't go to helping Black lives?
Well, the money was raised in the name of helping Black lives, but even on their website, they indicated that the policies that they were advocating would do nothing to help Black lives. They wanted to eliminate law enforcement, even though polling after polls showed Black Americans, more than any other group, want more law enforcement in their communities and not less. They came out against the standard nuclear family, and most observers point out that the nuclear family is a key success strategy for any culture, and that Black Americans actually need more stable nuclear families, not less. Apparently, they wanted to buy as many mansions and many lodges and other expensive real estate properties that they could transfer to others that had nothing to do with Black America. So when you look at what they said they were going to do and what they did, they followed through on their radical agenda. But actually helping Blacks? No, I wasn't surprised.
So what about the people who donated the millions upon millions of dollars, thinking they're doing it to, help Black lives? Can they get the money back, Horace? I mean, because
From where?
Yeah.
There's
Well,
no money.
Well, go at least get the mansion back. Get one of the mansions back, John.
So legally, it's a buyer beware circumstance. If you have a spare $1,000, or even if you're taking the baby's milk money and you're giving it to a cause, it's actually your job. Now, I will tell you this, state attorney generals are well within their bounds to investigate these abuses. Will they force money back? That's not as likely, but they may actually have criminal sanctions that flow. Now, many of the founding board members have skipped town, resigned their position, and wanting to argue that they didn't really understand what was happening.
Who are the board members?
Robbed, well, Patricia Cullors is one of them. But if a bank gets robbed, the money is gone, and you drove the getaway truck, you don't get to say, I didn't have any idea what was happening. I opened the door, a bunch of people jumped in, they had a lot of money, and I ran off. Your criminal liability is not going to be easily escaped with some sort of claim of ignorance.
Wow. So what do you see about the future of Black Lives Matter?
You know what we need? We need the names of the big CEOs that wrote out $10 million checks.
I'd be outraged.
I mean, do we have a list of that?
Yeah, who are the biggest donors, Horace?
There has been no transparency move. They call them best practices on the part of organizations. You look at some of the major groups like the Red Cross, and you'll see that they list some of their providers. However, a large number of groups like Apple, like Microsoft, like General Motors announced publicly that they were making large contributions. Amazon did a rebate, not a rebate, a copay.
All four of those companies have a huge process, an internal process, where if you're a legitimate charity, you have to go to them and go through this elaborate process just to get a piece of the pie. And they handed out money to BLM on a whim from the CEO.
That's
whim
right.
Or kind of pressured publicly?
You're right. A little whim, but a little
virtue
pressure.
signaling. This was virtue signaling.
Yes.
We are good people. Look, we took good money and threw it into the trash. See, that's proof that we're good people. Now, the real measure of good people is what improvements occurred as a result. Now, you just mentioned that these organizations and many of the other large ones have formal processes in place so that they can guarantee these resources that they provide are provided appropriately and used appropriately. They chose not to do so. Now, that doesn't excuse BLM for running off and buying mansions and hiring relatives and paying them 4, 5, or 10 times more than what they could have earned in the private sector. Those things can be investigated and likely will be found to be criminal.
Yeah, absolutely. And any sort of ripoff is obviously outrageous. Well, Horace Cooper, you got to come back on again soon. We always love having you here and telling us straight stuff. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you very much. And everybody, we're all talking about, of course, this CUNY law grad speech, of course, from the City University of New York, this hate-spilled vitriol against Israel, against the NYPD, calling them fascists. Also, the military, she even blasted CUNY.
And against the entire country, really.
And the whole country. You're right. And Pete, now joining us here on the show, is a veteran CUNY law professor. He has been a full-time CUNY professor for about 20 years, Professor Jeffrey Lax. Professor, how could this happen at the law school graduation? This is unbelievable.
Oh, that's a great question. How could this happen at the law school graduation? It's an absolute disgrace. In my 20 years of doing this, I have to say this is by far, it's not even close, the most horrific commencement speech I have ever heard. I think, as speaking as a lawyer, that it comes extremely close to incitement of violence because she calls for rage. What does days of rage mean in the Middle East nowadays? When you call for rage against Zionist Jews, you're calling for, in my view, violence against an entire group of people. She called for rage against capitalism. People like to talk about insurrections a lot nowadays. You know what? This sounded very close to me like a call for an insurrection.
Yeah, how did this happen? I mean, who vets these speeches? First off, was there at least somebody on the faculty who vetted this speech? And also, it was students who selected this vile speaker?
That's a great question, and it's very interesting what went down here. So let me give you just a tiny bit of the background. This speech was available on video publicly because it was streamed live. And CUNY Law immediately wiped it off of the internet completely right after after the commencement ended. And then what happened was my group, Safe CUNY, that I'm a proud co-founder of, foiled the video because we had heard that it was really bad. And they didn't give it to us because they didn't want to give it to us, but they made it public. So the question is, why did they hide it to begin with? And then I'm definitely going to answer your question. Don't worry in a second about how that happened. But what happened is CUNY Law School is under state investigation right now pursuant to a complaint that we made, my organization made, that they have BDS policy. Their faculty has unanimously adopted BDS as policy in the institution. And her speech gave specific examples of how the BDS policy is being implemented. So what we think is that the law school wanted to hide and obstruct the investigation against them and not have to, because it's finishing up. And they didn't want the investigators to see the implementation of the BDS policy. But to answer your question, in my 20 years of doing this, Rita, I have never heard of a commencement speech that was not vetted by an administration. And we know for a fact this speech was vetted by the administration. I do have good sources on that. What the administration is claiming, as far as I know behind the scenes as of now, is that they were given a document that was altered when the actual speech was given. Now, we need to see that original document, right? That's the big question. What did it look like?
Well, and you know the thing is, too, what I find hard to believe, Jeff, is that if this person, even if there was some alteration, this person doesn't seem to be hiding their emotions whatsoever. I feel like if you stopped her down the street, she would repeat what she said there. So, I mean, clearly whoever vetted her probably knew her opinions. Maybe it was watered down, but I mean, do you believe that that this was some big epiphany or surprise when she got on the stage?
So if I could answer that question, first, this is Pete King. They selected her. They knew where she was coming from.
Right.
Going beyond CUNY, has anti-Semitism become almost acceptable bias today in intellectual circles?
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that for me? I apologize.
Yeah, that's for you. Yeah. That's from Congressman Peter King.
I apologize. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, saying that The fact that she was selected in the first place, they had to know the bias she had. Secondly, going beyond CUNY, does this speech indicate a growing tolerance of anti-Semitism in the intellectual community?
100% yes to both questions. And let me just tell you, I am actually, what really enrages me is not that you have this one idiotic ignoramus student, because Rita and Pete, I'm a big fan of yours. Rita, you too.
I was going to say, what about being a fan of mine?
I am. I know all the work that you've done. I would love to sit down with you and hear about all those amazing interviews you've done over the years with so many people. Oh, my God.
Come to the studio one day and do this in person.
Yeah, come join us.
I offered to come in. You know, I used to do a show on WABC right before you guys took over with John. Yes, I want my show back. Absolutely. Okay.
He's taking your show now.
Oh.
No. I want a different show.
Wait, Cats, Cosby, and Lax? Is that where we're going here? Wait a minute.
Well, you know what? How about that? Invite me as a guest. I'm happy to come in and bring donuts. But let me answer your question. So what really enrages me about what you're asking about is, listen, when I was a student, Rita and Pete, I was an idiot, okay? Students have a right to be idiots. You have a right to be stupid. You have a right to make mistakes. You should be stupid. You should be making mistakes. That's why you have faculty there. To me, who is really wholly responsible here is the administration who saw the speech and allowed it to go on. Because, yes, the answer to both of your questions is absolutely yes. People knew her ideology. People knew what she was going to say when she got out there. And for the administrators who are full complaining now that the speech was changed, well, guess what? Go back and watch the video, and what do you see in the video? They're standing for her, clapping for her, rising for her, and applauding for her. So they heard that speech again after it was changed and loved it, it seemed, even more.
No, you're right, because the dean, in fact, of the law school was seen clapping. I mean, what does that say? Wow, wow, wow.
We got to take a break, but Jeffrey, we're going to invite you. We're going to invite you to the studio. Thanks for coming on today, and keep the truth flowing. Thank you so much.
That was great, Professor.
You guys too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Keep fighting the good
we're
fight.
going to take a break right now. We're going to come back with Congressman Barney Frank. Remember the old banking bill? Dodd-Frank knows something about banking, was on the Signature Bank board, and he thinks that there's some things that are not, how do you say kosher?
Not kosher. That's the best way to say it.
Let's take that break.